Okay. If you're watching VOD, just skip a couple of minutes. I'm just setting up a bit early, so just skip a little bit ahead if you want to get the info. Unstable average bitstream too high. Okay, that's weird. Give me a second. Too high. Okay, let's try 4,000. Should be better. That's a bit right, so okay. Hello for the people who are here, just setting up. Thank you so much for being early. There we go. Alright, so that should be good. Hi, all. We're not going to start yet. We got 3 minutes, so I want to say hi and all that stuff. I'm here. Ad breaks. Okay, let me set these up so that no one has to suffer this stuff because I haven't streamed in a while, so I have to change the ad breaks. Give me a sec. Okay. Do I have to add an ad manager thing or not? Where are you? Duck, 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 duck. Because I don't want you seeing an ad while I'm talking. I don't mind it being like before you connect, but while I'm talking, it's bad. Because the ad breaks are every hour, so I'll try to just get the ads done at a time. Because like it just says like when the ads start. So like the ad will start in about 2 minutes, and I'll get started after that. Just so that like I don't like what we're discussing isn't interrupted. Okay, so I talked about it. A few of you are here, which is great. I actually recognize 2 free names. So hello Treo as well. I don't actually recognize, but that's good. Welcome. All right. Yeah. Yeah, Cap. Salut. J'espère que ça va. Do I have VODs turned on? I hope I do. Like I've always had VODs. It's just that like after a certain while, VODs are removed from the Twitch channel, right? So yeah. I might have to like upload it to YouTube as well later, but I am recording locally, right? Stop. Yeah, so I'm recording locally as well. So no matter what, even if on Twitch it fails, we got a recording, so we're safe. Yeah. So hi Raymond, and yeah, Andre, I know as well you're a big fan of the work from when we did the podcast. This, if you saw the Circovitz podcast, this is gonna feel like a level. So it's gonna feel like a level below because we're starting with a preliminary one, which is is bad on purpose, and I'll explain why we do it. But like it's gonna start bad, like very basic info. It's gonna feel like not worth your time, and then when we continue, it's probably gonna open your eyes to like how different our perspective on limited is. So that'll be cool. So the ad break is starting in 10 seconds. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna run that. After that's done, I'll have you all here and we'll get that done. Hi Isawa. So yeah, ad break starting. And I don't want to like leave people hanging, so this should be 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll start right after that because I'm a big fan of all of you hearing. So if you're on VOD, skip a minute or two because there's an ad break on Twitch. I'm just gonna check stuff while we're doing. System live. Yeah, so this is going to take a minute probably or two. Okay, so the bit rate's looking good as well, which is great. And I forgot. Yeah, like I love Twitch, but like these ad breaks are killers sometimes on stuff like that. Ad break ends in 2 minutes. Jeez. And I hate our ad centric culture. I know why it's like that, but it hurts. In the meantime, if you're watching on VOD, you can check out the lovely stuff behind me. If you can figure it out. It is a little small than usual. But... all right. All right, 20 seconds. Ten. Come on, ads, finish, please, so we can get on with the show. All right, ads are done. Fantastic. Let's get rolling. So, thank you all for coming. I think the people who are here are very interested in high level limited. So this is going to be that. I lost something. Don't worry about it. Essentially, I'm going to go through kind of some of the lived experience of what we did at the house for Worldly Council. It reflects what we normally do. This set was very difficult, so the conclusions are kind of interesting. So like, bear with me for the first part because you're not going to get anything too interesting in terms of learnings for the open, but you will get interesting into like the journey is important. So that's what we're doing first. I will let you know when we get to the section where you should pay attention from a I need to know cards perspective and try to make money this weekend at the open. So the first thing we do before we even like start a draft is we do what we call a preliminary meeting. So this is like a very short presentation on kind of state of the format as stands. The reason for this is when we do pod drafts in the house, it's very important that we emulate what we believe the PT will be like. And the PT does match a little bit what people draft online because people's impressions are basically anchored to what is going on. So by observing what's going on, we can get reality. So this is like us going like, we're going to be simulating and I tell you what's going on at the PT. From there, we can learn and develop. And essentially what we're trying to do is be, basically a week ahead of the metagame, right? So if you think of the limited metagame, this is a snapshot of limited metagame at PT time by most people. And I'm trying to get people to week +1. So we got a week of testing ahead of us. So we need to, start at ground zero, so to speak, and then be at ground +1. For this set, it turned out we were +2 weeks, which is extraordinarily rare due to some weird parts of the set, which I'll get to. So the preliminary meeting is very basic. All of my meetings, by the way, start with a mission statement. It's what are we trying to achieve? So for me, it's very much the hunt for archetypes. It's discovering what archetypes there are. Because it's so early in the set, we don't necessarily understand archetypes. If you look at a set like MH3 compared to Amsterdam's release date, there's so much time that we know how archetypes work. So we're trying to look for different things. So in this case, though, the set's new, we're looking for archetypes. So usually here, I try to get one image that matches what people think. So like, for example, we have green is strong. So like I go for fatties because it's not just that green is strong, is we're seeing cards like Bounce Off, Momentum Breaker, and Engine Rat performing well. More like Engine Rat being a spin out level is unusual, right? So like and then Lightning Strike is low, right? So like the whole, you can't see it here because my face is covering the Lightning Strike percentage, but it's like C- grade, right? So this is the setting the scene, right? This is what's mattering day 1, day 0, right? Friday. From there, I go into like how the set works roughly, and the roughly is because we haven't yet figured it out, etc. So I talk about things that I can observe very quickly. So that creature sizing is extreme, right? You got 1/1 Death Touchers, and on the other side 6/6s. That evasion is rare. There's not actually that many flyers. That green's coming up on top in terms of raw stats. Now, in part, it's because green's easy to draft. There's a lot of rares mythics. So you kind of see Sultai Callers are top performers, Blue Black's deep, Selenia and Gruul don't have much depth, Blue White has a bit more. Like, basically it's early days, things change, so it's like right now, as stands, if I was to like literally match on the day, it's like fatties matter, so anti-fatties cards are important. So then I have this thing called Color Strength and Draft. This isn't too important. I wouldn't attach much value to this, but it's like, I look at the data, and in preliminary, usually my letter grades kind of just match the actual grade. But like it's basically a combination of the data I see tempered by either the house results or what's going on online, or what's going on at a slightly deeper level on the data I can see. In this case, it's not super important. Same way you'd see like grades from a content creator, not ultra important here. But what's important for me is I'll highlight things like if there's an S tier archetype or an F tier archetype. So for example, MH3, Gruul was S tier, right? It was Chrysalis was the best comment, etc. So yes, these are BO1 grades too, right? We haven't done pod draft yet. I can't say what works in pod draft because we haven't done it. So this is preliminary again. So for example, if you looked at information online, Boros would be unplayable. And we'll get to that. Based on like what I can see at that moment, right? Like you would never end up in Boros reasonably. So then what I do is I don't teach the team how to draft archetypes. I just let them know, here are some inklings of information that are important for you. So I'll go with like cards that are powerful, like Ride Zen, Broadcast Rambler, and Blue White. Cards that are synergistic, like Guide Light Synergist, literally. And then and then packages that make sense, like Scoured Barons and Hunt the Network. So we're going to go through these quickly because they're not really important, but it's to give you this impression of like each archetype with like what's important and like what's performing in this archetype, like Streak and Oligor just performing well in Black White early on, right? So I'm giving like imagery, right, on how the archetypes perform. That's the idea, is like the person gets imagery. Boros was, of course, the second I do this, there were 2 or 3 people on the team who were like, I'm going to force Boros. But like from data, there was nothing that was redeeming Boros. So there was from the information was being drafted online, there was nothing I could tell the team on how to build Boros. So like as a result, like if I was based on what's going, that's why there's an X. It's that bad. Then I go through it, green, white. I'm going through this quickly because this isn't the information I want you to retain. It's more we're doing this preliminary meeting. You're getting what's the point. these are the archetypes. This was what we're looking for. You know, blue red, obviously, Scrounging Skyraid, Marauding Mako. This should be Simic, by the way. This is a typo, but you know how Dismal Backwater is important. Red black, you have, you know, aggressive cards. Green black, you have the Back on Track synergy, World Tyrant being okay. Green red, where Pedal to the Metal's good. I'm going through these quickly again, not too important. This is more a, you know, we're setting the scene. I also let the team know on things that this set there weren't many single card look-ins, but in something like MH3 there would be a ton of this, right? So these are cards that are one-off strategies, alternative win conditions that we've identified early. So in this case, the set's been out 3 days by the time I do this meeting, so like very little. River Churn Monument was the important one to let the team know, yes, this is very powerful. So if you have it, be prepared to play draft around it. A for Siphon, should promise, all that stuff. But the main thing is this, right? Where the preliminary meeting leads to this slide, the objectives. It's all the first line is always the same. We're always searching what the format's about, right? So we're always going for a mission statement on what the format's about. That's like mission critical. Before you sit down at a Pro Tour draft, an arena open draft, you have to go, what is my goal in this format? Because once you know what the format's about, you can kind of shift your perception to accept metagame shifts over time. And that's going to be, we'll get back to that at this point a bunch of times throughout the main presentation. Figuring out pod draft dynamics is almost always the second mission. So in this case, what's unique is how the Sultai colors look, because we know these are performing, right? Or figuring out the other 6 playable archetypes, understanding what positioning is when understanding the draft format. And in this case, that card evaluations will change, right? Because the format's new, so card evaluations are not set in stone in any way, shape, or form. If I was doing something like MH3, the card evaluations changed a little bit for some, but most cards stayed close-ish to what they were after week 1, once you remove the first couple of days. So, but in this case, it's early, things will shift. So, this is the preliminary presentation. It's like a warm-up. It's not meant to be long. It's just meant to be an alignment with the rest of the team. This is what's going on. And I don't want you to necessarily do this, but you need to be playing in a way that reflects what people at the Pro Tour will do on day 1, because that's what you're going to face, right? So we want to test against that. If I just left the team to do anything, we would have to relearn lessons from scratch, and that's not my goal. My goal is, there are biases, right? People will have biases before sitting down and touching a single card. So you need to play with those biases in mind. We will later change those biases, but for now we need to play with those because we need our pod drafts to reflect reality at the Pro Tour. I hope that makes sense. For all of you, it's essentially this concept of, like, you're not playing in a vacuum. You're playing against people. You're playing against people who at the Pro Tour are saying that green is good. So why? I can't have you need to discover that green is good. That's wasting time and it's wasting good work. I'd rather tell you green is good and then we see what happens as a result of you being told that green is good. All right. So that's kind of, hey, guys. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done Twitch in a while. To be honest, I've been working like full time and, yeah, I mean, my life has changed a bit. That's all. Yeah. So, now, give me a second to remove full screen. So what we're going to do, I'm not going to show you all of this. I'm just making sure that it looks good. Here we go. Okay. So we're not going to go through this, but I did record one of our draft reviews. This is the 7th one. It's unlisted, so you're not going to be able to find it. This is because I haven't asked the team if they're okay with their likeness being on camera and stuff like that. This focus is very much on the cards. But what we do when we do a pod draft at the house is all the decks are laid out across the table and we go one by one around the table talking about it. We usually start with the Frio deck. You know, there's a ritual of applauding the person who's succeeding, giving them props for doing a good job, you know, highlighting. It's good to like promote and highlight success without necessarily being ego about win rates and stuff like that. So here, for example, what we'll do, I'm going to skip a few moments. So like here, you'll see me pointing out at important things with like, For example, we're talking about, for example, here, Haunted Network, the importance, obviously, we're looking at blue-black deck. So, 1 second here. That was an important thing that appeared on screen. So, okay. So here on screen, you can see a phone in your top left. Something we do after pack 1 is we asked everybody in the team to just take a picture of their pack 1 fan with picks, right? This is because after like 3 rounds of play, and you play all your rounds, it's super important to know the difference between the 1, 2, and the 0-3 decks. So we ask a picture because people forget, and this just helps remember. So this way they can always check on their phone. These are the picks I made. And gives them like a bit of hint of memory, and obviously you have everybody else at the pod, so if they forget, I don't know what I took this over, they're like, oh, I got this, and then like the story of the draft is being built, right? So essentially we're going around the table doing this. I'm not going to go too much into it, but essentially you can see here kind of this table view, like it's expanding, essentially. Yeah, so you can see here a good shot of the table and like how we reconstruct essentially every seat, and every seat is telling their story. Now, there's a mathematical reason behind this, which is that there's a limit to how many drafts a single person can do. So by doing this, everybody who's there is learning the draft experience of the person at that seat. So, for example, we have our green-white player in that seat in the middle. When we get to them, they explain what happened. These are the picks I made. We check, obviously, if it made sense, didn't make sense, etc. They relate their experience. They relate what was good, what was bad. And then after that, while you didn't play 3 rounds of limited Magic with that deck, the person did tell you, these are the picks I made, this is what performed, what underperformed, key plays, key situations. So you do come out of it with an experience of what it would be like to draft this archetype. Now, this is done in a couple of minutes, 3 to 5, 3 if the deck's not too interesting, 5 it's super interesting. And then as you go, you're essentially absorbing stories, right? Every draft deck is a story. And because of that, it's like if you did half the draft, right? You didn't get the experience of the play, but you can kind of imagine what's going on and get it, right? So by doing this, we're creating... So the concept that I've kind of tried to term it as is a player draft. It's like, if it... Like, a player draft is you drafted and you played your draft is one player draft. Like, that's the unit in a way. So when you're doing a recap or a story... The question is, how much of a player draft was it? So, by experience, I'd say about half is about right, but whatever. This is arbitrary and debatable. But it's this concept of, I draft 6 times, but I lived way more experiences. I have 48, because again, everybody in the house were 16. That's a lot of draft. You can have between 50 to 100 played drafts from other people and stories related to you. So while you draft 6 times, you get 50 to 100 stories. And that's how we absorb information. And it helps us as well shortcut a bit the card evaluation step, because you're seeing cards always in context. You never see cards like, oh, we're going to discuss this card out of context. No. It's always in a deck. It's always placed, and there's always a reason for it. So I'm going to just quickly, and no, it's not pack 1, pick 1. Like, we're really doing the picks. Like, we're looking at pack 1, pick 5, pick 6, pick 7, because you want to see the story of how the draft came together. Yeah, Raymond, yeah. Like, taking a picture is good. You can do a notepad if you don't want the digital aspect as well. Draft. So Andre, Draftmancer and stuff. So this house, the set came out. We have in the past done online drafts where like all of us like kind of go into a single elim queue, and then the ones who are eliminated play their matches outside. Those are fine. It's just that for the set, it made 0 sense because it would be out 3 days and then the house would happen. So no need to draft online because we need the data to be up anyways to know what impressions are. So instead of wasting time on that, didn't make sense. But we have in the past for formats which are longer done, for example, a draft abroad. So like there'll be a draft, everybody takes their draft logs, and then like I would, for example, do a review. I'd be like, okay, here are the 8 draft logs, and then I'll do the review. Once they've shipped me the review, like for example, I'll record something, put it on YouTube on an unlisted video, and everybody can see the draft review in an hour. Because they're earlier on, there's a few more explanations and advice and stuff. Yeah. All right. So that's kind of like the draft review. I'm not going to show much more. I think if you have questions about this, always feel free to ask. But yeah, laying the decks around, talking about the pick orders, impressions, etc. Super, super important. Yeah. So Theo Jung, one issue I found with house draft is that they get someone inbred eventually. Does Worldly Councils have any practice to mitigate this? Excellent, absolutely excellent question. Yes. So I'm actually gonna show. I was gonna segue into this, so like showing it makes sense. Okay, so these are the draft records we had at the house. So these are like our house. So like something you'll notice, by the way, we'll get to it. Is you can take a lot of different impressions from this. Like you could go like, oh, white was the best color and red were the best colors, which makes no sense compared to what's online, right? So like, oh no, they're all wrong about this online. That's not the lesson, right? Is you'll also notice that the number of matches are lower. Is the actual correlation is the decks that were drafted less perform better is the much more common answer. So one impression, for example, we had is, and I'll get to Boros, right? Is we figured out a way to build the Boros decks to win, which I'll get to. But basically, they are 15 land Pulse Sly style curve decks. Now, as a result, I've had people on the team going like, oh, the glider, like I need to force this, right? They're like, oh, I need to take this pick free and stuff. This is where it's important to have somebody who's a bit removed from the process and can dial down hype. So something I do a lot is is going like, okay, what's, we don't necessarily know the lesson, so let's dial it down. I will keep being on the lookout for what the performance of this card is, what the situation is, but like I'm like, do not start taking this card P1 P free, because then you are warping the draft, which harms the process, but also it's not proving your point. If you're starting to force the archetype, knowing that at the PT that's never happening anyways, then we're inbreeding our hash testing, right? So it's doing that process of you're hype on this, let's cool it. Like it's cooling hype at the right stages. It's going like, this doesn't make sense. Or like it's basically going down a grade. It's like taking the situation in context and going like, we need to be careful. For example, we're like, oh, white is winning or red is winning. Oh, those colors might be good. And like you dial it down with like, yeah, but we're not seeing the performance. The commons aren't making sense. Just draft as you would, learn the archetypes, and then, learn from there. So like one of the reasons to avoid the house drafts, like deviating too much, is to remember what the situation of the PT is, right? Is we're essentially testing for PT draft 2. I'm not testing for like draft 4 or something, right? A draft that doesn't exist. It's like, how do you play against people who know what they're doing? And if we're going beyond that, I bring it back. I will say you shouldn't have picked that here. Be careful doing this. Like, because these are not situations that match reality. It's fine to trial, it's fine to experiment, but if somebody is truly deviating, if I'm seeing the deviation at the house, I will bring it back, and I will, in like the global review of the table, go like, no, we need to swing that back a little bit. Yeah, so basically that's it, right? During the review, learn what's up. But yeah, so essentially, I'll hide this because it's taking a lot of real estate space. But you're right, like the house drafts do get inbred. That happens a lot. And that's where my role is really important, and whoever's role it is somebody who kind of cools the situation, because it's not the message that matters. A card being good or bad is not what Modern Limited is about in any way, shape, or form. And we're going to get to that now. So, this, by the way, if you are interested in winning cash in the Arena Open, if you're interested in this format, is the presentation that matters. Everything else is the journey, the setup, what's going on, etc. So that part's done. This is the last presentation. There are things that would have added to it, given time. This was a little rushed at the end, so I will highlight the things. I think I have a notepad here. Stuff I'd like to talk. Yeah, we'll approach those when we get there. Future PT prep, but the Arena Cash is the bonus. Yeah, I know for sure. Well, for me, the Arena Cash is the only bonus I get because the harder it is to qualify. But the important part here is I wanted to give you context before this presentation. At this point, we're in a house where white and red have performed, where what we're seeing online is not what's matching. So the conclusion could be white and red are great. This is where it's important to have experience and knowledge, because in the past, like a lot of the ways that people externally have looked at our process is, oh, they just look at data, which I do, but I don't look at data with the perspective of I'm seeking for answers. When I look at data, I'm looking for questions. So, and you're gonna see as I go through this, ask yourself, like, try to spot the times where I'm not giving you an answer, I'm giving you a question to answer instead. Because humans are very good at identifying problems. We are terrible at solutions. Awful. Like, downright terrible. So, if you see questions, that's not wrong. Now, solutions might be wrong, but, like, again, that's why approach matters. So, again, mission statement. So, this is obviously, so when we start these, I go a little bit for levity, right? Everybody sit down, it's a little quiet. The important part is to keep morale high, and it's to important people engaged over time, because there's a lot of dry material. So, I do something like this. I put the world's worst meme possible in this page. Very important, this is the worst meme you put. And the reason for that is because no one's paying attention except to what you're saying, because this is so terrible. But basically, when I approached this, it was the perspective of, at our drafts, we saw that a lot of the decks that free owed, and a lot of the decks that were 2-1 plus performers, so like 2-1 plus for me is like, it went 2-1, could have gone 3-0 rather than the other way around, is those decks usually came together very late. They came together late pack 2, maybe even pack 3. And we're starting to notice this pattern of a lot of the best decks coming together very late in the draft. So this is idea of digging for your deck. So, by the way, this is what I usually start with. This is MTG Data Science, does a terrific job. If you don't follow him, follow him. As well as Sirkovitz. I think if you follow MTG Data Science and Sirkovitz, you're pretty set on a lot of this data stuff. But essentially, this is a great visualization, right, of like where the colors are at. So, for example, the blue, blue is not doing so well at common, but uncommon, you can see the strong ones, right? So that's how I would highlight that. This set, because it's very recent, came to a slightly different conclusion as I looked at it in detail. This is not a usual placement for the meme. This is new, but it made sense for Aetherdrift. It was this idea of, normally we'd look at data in more detail, but this time there's a problem. So I obviously I had to put more memes, but basically, Sapsunin, alongside other cohort RM green cards, was so powerful that it entirely warped. Okay, there's an ad. I'm gonna just snooze that one. 5 minutes, dear Lord, we are in trouble. Hopefully we'll get there. But anyways, so the Sapsunin here, right? The green cards are so warped, and they warp data. So like when I looked at Thornwood Falls, it was plus 6% in blue, black, and blue, red. Why was it plus 6? Because there's all these rare and mythics that are green. As a result, it was warping data. So when we get to green, we'll notice that the win rate drops. Now, why is the win rate dropping? It came about that people originally in a format do what they feel like. So they opened a bomb green rare or mythic. They're like, I feel like playing green. So they play green. Later on, when the data comes out and people are playing green, they're like, I'm playing green because it's good. That's not the right answer. And that's why the green win rates go down, is that people played the color for the wrong reasons. Green isn't the best color. It was because it was the best rares and mythics. It was the best in a vacuum of, I don't know what I'm doing. So that's not what's going on. And also, it's really important to make these messages fun, because the funner they are, the more it imprints at the people's brains. And there are going to be drier parts here, right? So again, you got to keep, it's important for me to keep the team entertained, because drafting like this is so much information. This limited meeting is long usually, but we're talking 1 or 2 hours. We're not talking 4 or 5. So, okay. So, by the way, if you're wondering about this graph specifically, the one with daily performance, 17 Lands has a Patreon. You don't get more information on that Patreon you couldn't get just looking at the standard stuff. It's not like I'm getting more info because I paid money. It just visualizes it in a way that's easier for me to parse through cards, because when I set this up, when I put this presentation together, I do the card evaluation exercise, because there's no need for everybody to be involved in that step. It's better. I've seen what's going on. I understand what's going on. I will do the card evaluation. I will go through them because I'm looking for different things to the team. The team is going, is this card good or not? I'm going, okay, what's the perspective? What are the archetypes? What are we looking? Is the pick order high, low? What are we trying to do? What's the message I want? It's very different questions to what the team's about. If I did an open presentation on single cards to the team, we'd lose a lot of time, because the team is trying to figure out different answers to what I am trying to figure out. I'm trying to understand the format. They're trying to understand the card. So if you did a card evaluation meeting, you would waste a ton of time. It's not 4 hours or 5 hours. It's 5 hours every expertise on your table, right? Let's say you have 16 people here listening in. It's 16 times 5 hours. We're talking about 80 hours. You want to reduce the amount of time spent on an exercise as much as possible. So this is a coordination meeting, right? At this point, we're learning what we've already learned, and we're putting everything in perspective. That's why everyone's there. It's to adjust and coordinate. Card evaluation, you don't need to coordinate. It's no. Okay. This I don't want to spend too much time on because color strength and draft changes. I think the important part for me here is more the that the Aetherdrift is a specifically weird set where the percentages don't match the grade. That's not actually the case. There's only 2 or 3 deviations. There's not actually a match. For example, I put Gruul at D. And the reason I put Gruul at D is there's not really a reason to be in Gruul specifically. That's why it's a lower grade. Is like all the other archetypes have a very good reason to jump into, and Gruul doesn't. That's like the difference. So I'm not going to spend too much time here as a result, because it's not too important based on the lesson I want you to learn. So, and now we're after the fun, we're at the like what I call the important part. This is the true how the set works. This is like I'm putting forward to the team the thesis based on data and based on the information we've seen at the house and the conversations we have on our approach at the Pro Tour, and also how the set works. So for me, I'm going to read this. This is the important part. Aetherdrift is a set with many micro synergy payoffs and secret gold and or archetype cards. There are many very strong cards for specific decks that will go late. Specifically, when we go through it, when I looked at the information, I'm going to use a term called +2. What I mean by +2 is there's cards that when they're on your deck give you +2% win rate. So, but those come like picks, 7, 8, 9, 10. So having these kind of +2 win rate cards coming in 7, 8, 9, 10 is not actually that common. So as a result, I would consider strong cards. Like basically the best uncommons are +5. So like multiple +2 cards would be good. But like we're also seeing that these +5 uncommons, like cards that would set you up in the archetype, are also coming late. And there are many uncommon signposts that are of exceptional strength, like bomb rare level. So as a result, it is crucial and critical to find the archetype that the table is not touching. And that's the theory. And the thesis is it's a format defined by accepting table rather than seat signals. So you're not trying to understand your seat, you're trying to understand what's going on in your table entirely. So, but because there's so much depth in the late packs, wheeling, which is very rare in Play Booster Land, wheeling is an important part of the strategic arsenal. That was something we noticed, is wheeling is important. So, and something, a meme that I didn't get in was like, let me see if I can get it up. I put it online on Blue Ski or Blue Sky or whatever. It was this idea of sending like moles or scouts. So like you take a card in your pack that you open, or P1, P2, and you're like, okay, well this card is powerful in the right setup. So I need it to, but I don't want to take it too early because of the power level being so conditional. So I'm going to ship it. And if it comes back, that tells me the coast is clear. If it doesn't come back, then I need to have caution. So this can be something like Marauding Mako, right? The worst of the blue-red gold uncommons in blue-red. It can be something like Glider. You send the Glider. If it comes back, you're like, the aggro deck might be open at the table. Call it in, right? You don't want to be in Boros. necessarily. But if it comes back, you know that no one's overvaluing Boros, so you can safely go in. The problem with Boros, right, at an open arena table is like people might go into it randomly. So like you can't gamble, but if you're the only one in it, it might work. So by sending cards, you're essentially reading your table. So it's like sending scouts. Okay. So then I'm not going to go into this. This is long. This is the one card evaluation exercise that's here. So this is the one with the most questions. What does this card do? Like the card names, right? Like people have seen the art, they might not know the card names. So a lot of questions on this. A lot of questions on pick orders. This is like the longest section. I don't really want to spend time here. Just check the VOD later if you really want to check. This is like tempered between data and what I would believe modifications might be in best of free top player style stuff. It's not like a gospel, but yeah. The only one I want to highlight really importantly here is in Boros. This is the first time I've done this, is putting the top 3 cards as not about power level, but about a curve, scry, mana. And we'll get to that. But it's essentially the Boros deck that we're building as a mathematical deck. So there's not a top common, so to speak. You have to build your deck. So it's more about priorities. So this is only the longest because people want to adjust. One of the lessons for me that we should have done is I didn't put like typical archetype decks. Like what would the archetype do? Because we've done the house draft, so people should know. That said, in the future, there are many house drafts. I will probably end up doing something where I take pictures and I'll take a picture of an example of a good version of the deck and a bad version of an archetype. So then, for example, when we talk about blue-white, I'd go like, here's a good blue-white deck, here's a bad blue-white deck, and here's why. So that way we can remove the discussion from the exact pick order cards, or like just pick order, and more into deck construction and archetype construction. Because that's really what matters, right? Is like the team has to understand archetypes and the format. So I'm going to skip this a bit. I do commons, uncommons, and then obviously I'll do commons and uncommons because you need relative strength on this stuff. We're not going to go into this though. Packed all Dare in white blue. So by the way, this is why I do this, and you'll see why. Is I look at every card because I am not interested in opinion. I'm interested in seeing what's going on. I don't need people to tell me a card is good or bad. It's not relevant. Because at the house, people will also evaluate cards. We've had the Clone be overvalued, and we had Bulwark Ox be overvalued. And I've had to perspectivize it, right? So, like, we'll get to it when we get to overrated cards section, but yeah. So, then we have what I call the pod draft metagame. So, this is what's going on, right, in our pod draft. So, this is, by the way, the last news I have on ads. After that, we're going to just run one. But the pod draft metagame. It's this idea of, I'm telling the team what's going on. So packs are dense because many cards only fit certain archetypes. So you can expect high card quality density later. The gold signal post uncommons are very potent. There's also 2 actually. So aiming to be defined by the one, right one is very valuable. Something, by the way, that happened in our house drafts is a lot of the lower performing decks have what I call the 18th to 23rd mismatched card effect, which is you'll bid an 18 card deck and the last picks are just terrible. So, as in, they're bad cards that don't match your plan. So the important part is, yes, your last cards are going to be bad, but you want bad cards that fit your plan, basically. So, as a result, if you know what you're doing, it should not be too difficult to fit 18 to 23rd powerful cards within the boundaries of your archetype if your table is leaving the strategy alone. And that's why it's important to read the signals. So, as a result, the leverage is to find the open archetype at your seat and get rewarded massively. Pod draft dynamics, right, is that staying open is crucial because there's a lot of power in the format. It's defined within its own narrow synergy boundaries, though. So as a result, all the archetypes are to some degree playable, and don't worry, we'll go for those. So instead of just reading passing signals, right, in most formats, you want to read what the person passing to you is doing because that's best. More important here is reading table signals. It's where you're getting late signal post uncommons that are powerful, picks 5 to 10. And it's really important you don't read too much into picks 1 to 4 in play boosters. Later on. For example, you get a nice card in your archetype P1, P2, P4. That might not mean much. Now you get it 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, table's leaving it alone. So you want to make sure pack 1 you are feeding not just the person you are passing to, but the table, cards that do not fit at all in your lane. So something I like to do, for example, is this is a medium playable, but I'm never going to be in this because my first couple of picks are going into these like 4 archetypes that are not interested in this. I'd rather pass that because I want people at the table to stay as much away from what I'm doing. So I need to ship that stuff. Very important that you're telling your table, have fun. It's open season on this because of this. But obviously the reverse is, I'm interested in this, so I need to take it. But that's easier. Yeah, baited into green is... Anything that's like picks 2 to 4 is not too important because things can go weird. It's later on. So, as a result, you're planning ahead to wheel critical high-value cards within your archetype. And if a card doesn't wheel, it's a signal to be cautious. Now, obviously, if the card's just good, it'll get taken. But it's a question of... for example, Ticket Tortoise. If your pack is quite dense and the free one doesn't come back... The artifact decks are interested in that. So if you were like drafting black and considering going into artifacts, but the free one hasn't come back, that's telling you, okay, I gotta be careful here. You might still want to go in the archetype, right? You maybe open a haunt, you gotta go into it, but you're kind of reading what's going on, right? So now this was new for this session. So one of the things is every team member has different biases, right? Some people prefer playing some of the aggro decks, some people prefer the green decks, etc. So what I did here is I accept that not every team member is going to perfectly know where to take cards, right? They're not, they might have what I call like, they want to draft the mid, what was it called? The medium way, which was a term that Strasky put up, which is, there are 3 archetypes or 2 archetypes. So I'm going to draft this way. So these are positioning examples. They're essentially, this is what you could do. These are not recommendations. These are like, this is a reasonable thing to do. So for example, you can prioritize black because the cards are generically good. There's no problem. And you can open, and you can go into 4 reasonable archetypes with it, right? All the top black commons, the rat, the 1 free, the spin out, usually come late. Usually good in all the black archetypes to some degree, so like you're not losing card quality early, and then you can pick your black archetype. So that would be like a strategy. Another position is you might be looking for the first powerful goal uncommon, and that gets you down a direction. That might be your choice. You're like, I don't want to think too much. I kind of want to semi-force, which dangerous, but your call. You might stay, for example, in a generic monocolor position. This is like the first statement, but it's a bit different. And then you learn from signaling what to move into. And then the wheeling strategy, right? You could look at your first pack and go like, depending on what wheels, I will know which direction I want to go into. So for example, in my PDQ draft, I saw a Mako P1, P2, as well as Howler's Heavy. I saw, in P1, P1, I saw the Howler's Heavy. I don't take those cards that early. Howler's Heavy didn't come back P1, P9, but I saw Howler's Heavy P1, P10. What that told me is there is a blue-red drafter at the table, but there's only one because they probably would have taken Howler's Heavy, the other one. So it tells me I need to be cautious in blue-red. I would still jump with the right card because the archetype could support 2 with the right opens, but I need to be careful. And the Mako is very specific because the Mako is the worst one of all of them, right? So that tells me that somebody might be forcing blue-red too, whereas I might want to open it or read into it. So it's a very... So like, I get a lot of information from a card not coming back. So we got the ad break in 2 minutes. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about Esper artifacts. I'm going to let the ad break run, and then we'll be back for the next part. So one of the key findings from what we did is we found that there wasn't really blue-white or blue-black. It was really Esper artifacts. Those archetypes kind of blended in because a card like Mendicant Core in blue-white, not so good. In Esper artifacts, much better. And then once you started looking at Esper artifacts, you're like, oh, the dual lands are important. Starting column is important. Tortoise is important. You start putting a priority on cards that you're thinking about it in a very different fashion because Pact Altera performs so well in blue-white because it's what the deck wants. It's a free color deck that is just 2+1 color usually, like with a splash. So like, for example, here, I'm putting cards that would define you to go into the deck, are more powerful in the deck, or are only about this archetype. So these are like kind of key cards that this archetype's interested in, but most people aren't, or it has higher values. For example, Aether Siphon's much better in this. Hull Drifter doesn't really have a home, but this. Camera Launcher, almost unplayable, except in this. Starring Column, very particularly great in Esper Artifacts, because it fits all the builds. That artifact, it builds you time. You have the one free, easy ways to put pressure, usually, with the Pact Altera and stuff. Fixes your colors, and you want some card advantage late, so, like, Starring Column, like, kind of, like, ties the room together. It also means if you like start blue-white, you might want to take those black duels quite high early, because you know that's Pact 2 and free. You got Han, you Pact also. We're going to go look into archetypes in a bit. So, by the way, the ad break is starting. We're going to do this now, and then I'll see you right after that. So, if you're on VOD, I'm very sorry I had to run an ad break. So, this will end in about a minute. But yeah, if you're watching on VOD, I hope you're finding this interesting, of course. So, the big thing, right, is if you're looking, because you can scroll, is you'll be able to see archetypes later on, but you also want to be able to like kind of go back and really think about, I'm not prognosticating to play a color. That's the actual important part and the lesson of this format. And you'll notice that it's very different from the conversations that you would have had around the format. It's extraordinarily different. It's because this format doesn't really care so much about color strength. So we'll get to that. But anyways, ad break soon, and we are back normally. So obviously some latency on ads. We're gonna wait a second or two, but all right. The message here, while we look at the archetypes, is you're setting the scene, right? It's first off, what's the core mission? What's going on? Then it's what are we doing? Then it's let's dive into stuff. Now, obviously, we looked at colors, but like archetype look-ins, by the way, are a little distinct from the archetypes. I'm not doing all 12 plus of them here. These are the ones that like my team has specifically said, I want more info on this. So the archetype look-in is in archetypes that like the team wanted more info on, whereas the card evaluation stuff is more like for the rest. So like you're not going to see black-green here because the team was pretty confident about how black-green looks. So this is also where memes are good. So this one might be almost unreadable, but actually it's cut off. Oh no. So I'm going to read the start because it cut off. It says, oh, sorry, Shna. So, I have way too many lands. What will I do with all these lands? So there was a joke at our house. I'm just gonna respond. I'll wait for a bit. Okay, but like basically we were building Dwaros decks with 16 and then 15 lands. Basically. So this is where you should ask questions when looking at data. When I was looking at data for Boros, 5 drops and 6 drops were doing very well. And there's a way to look at it, right? You could go like these 5 drops and 6 drops are very good. The alternative way to look at it is the deck doesn't really have much to do with its mana. So any payoff is so critical that it is showing as winning. But it's not strategically. But when you look at the win rate of the archetype, it's very low. So that means you have to go in one direction, right? You can go like, this is actually a mid-range deck and needs to play these cards. Or the decks are built incorrectly and we need to rebuild the way they are. I'm proposing that it's more on the 15 land side. One thing, by the way, my teammates have different levels of experience in Magic. Everybody does. So when you're talking about very base mathematical stuff, this is something I noticed. Some of them were playing 7 of their main sources. That's not acceptable in limited. So like, I mean, in sealed it is because you don't have a choice, but like, you know, telling them you have to have 8 of your main sources. So essentially we were looking at an archetype called 15 land white, and it's very much, this is interesting because it's not talking about how to necessarily draft the archetype. It's talking about the fundamental mathematic behind it, which is that it's a 1/2 1+2 archetype. it's not a normal deck. So you're not trying to go 1-2 free unless the free is something really good, like the 4-2 trample haste in the vehicle. Gastel frill roller is really good in these type of aggressive decks. But it's really this idea of 1-drop. And by the way, the dual end is one of the best 1-drops. Just being stable on mana. Like the Krag, the Night Market, you need 1 in these decks just from a color source perspective. Probably 2. So it's really going 1-drop, 2-drop, 1+2. And then there was an example of a curve of, well, you probably wouldn't be in Boros without the Cloudspire Coordinator. There needs to be a reason for you to be there. That means that you probably have it because it came late. So this is what I proposed, right? And then obviously you have the District Mascot, the Lagorin, which I don't think is that great, but works in this. So it was talking about rebuilding the archetype and teaching the team how to build the archetype because it's a deviation to kind of what makes sense. And it helps put in perspective, like Brightfield Glider was overperforming at the house. So you needed context, right? It's like, okay, we're at the PT. Don't start taking this P1, P free or something. But in context of this, it makes more sense. It's, okay, like I will get this late. So as a result, I can build this deck. And then there's that perspective, Spot Cycle Scouter not doing so well. But it's because the vehicles specifically need more material on the board. So by having less lands, you help the chances of having more material on the board that helps you essentially make that card be quite good. Because it should be quite good, right? Theoretically. Why was it bad? And then that's the way to think about it, right? It's the, if this seed is open, which happens often, it's how do I build this deck? What am I looking for? And that's why there's not a pick order priority on individual cards. It's because you need to go 1-2, 1+2, you are going to pick a 1-drop really highly when you need it. You are going to take premium 2-drops when you need them. You're going to deprioritize free drops. And that's why I don't necessarily look at pick order stuff 100% of the time, is because when you look at an archetype like this, it's so dependent on what you're trying to do. So I think this was probably the most unique innovation from our testing house. Specifically that like Boros was just misbuilt. And this was a much better way of building Boros. And honestly, I looked at a bunch of drafts online of people and nobody's figured this out. Which is... I didn't figure this out, to be fair. This was teammates. So, you know, but it is an important lesson. It's why are the 5-drops and 6-drops performing so well? It's because the deck is flooding out. That's all. All right. So then I looked at blue-red. You're not going to learn much here. I think you'll learn more online. This was a pretty standard archetype. I said it could be 16 lands. Like, if you have a lot of cyclers, you don't have many ways to, like, discard lands. You're a bit low on Thunderhead Gunners. Like, Gunners are a big reason to play 17 lands. But, like, you don't have Gunners. You have a lot of cyclers. You might be more on the 16. And it's talking about, you know, those 5 cards on the left are really strong in the archetype. You get Ironclad and Howl's Heavy late in there. They're great. Etc., etc. So... it's also talking about Avishkar Raceway, which doesn't specifically perform that well in blue-red, but is okay in some builds with the if the engine matters. It could be like your spell, right? Like it's the 17th land of your spell. I'll skip this because you'll probably not learn much here. But again, these are archetypes that we looked in. Black-white was the archetype we felt the most classic archetype that could give you an edge in a normal situation. Because Embalmed Ascendant was coming super late. Your early drops, there are some great ones, but Raymond, I will get to that. So we were talking about specific decks here on like starting your engines, like that, like the cards that are bad, so to speak, on 2 mana do have some merit in black-white because you're just trying to like, you know, you go like Engine Rat into the 2-drop that does it, or Wicker Folk into one of the free mana start your engine cards, and then Oil Gorger starts making sense, all that stuff. Interestingly, unlike the red-white deck, you'll notice I didn't put Scoured Barrens here. Is because you're not building this as the 15-land white deck. You're building this as its own black-white, like 16 lands plus Raceway archetype, because you want to make your lands on turn, right? You want 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's not like curving out the same way. But you could build a version of this that is 15-land white with some of the key black cards, but then you need the dual land. Raceway is less important, right? So it's all about... So I talk here a lot about the perspective between how you could draft even the same archetype in 2 different ways based on what you're getting. If you're getting more of the free 2 vehicle, the links, etc., maybe you're less black based because black is cut, then you're like, okay, I might want to go this way. And then my top end is that Oil Gorger. But I'm not playing mainly 3 or 4 drops, right? Then I look at Teamer. So one of the interesting facts for me is that blue-green and red-green are not real archetypes. They're Teamer. The best performing decks for Esper are not blue-black or blue-white. They are Esper artifacts. Teamer's the same. Once you put Teamer in that lens of, oh, this is a value-generating deck, it works really well. You have a ton of mana fixing at common. The dual lands are between common and uncommon. But the boost buggy in Teamer is exceptional. You have a lot of... The context changes again, right? Like, if you look at blue-green or red-green, why are people in those colors? Red-green doesn't have a reason, and Skyseeper Serpent, the blue-green reason, so to speak, is just generically good. So, once you look at Teamer differently, right, you're like, you might be red-green, you might be blue-green, but really you're in that Teamer sphere and space. This all makes sense, and then you're prioritizing the lands that you need and all that stuff. Once you think about it this way, you're going to train wreck less your drafts. Whereas if you fought in blue-green or red-green terms, you might, because Boost Buggy and the rare, the red-green rare, aren't actually, and the Boom Scholar aren't actually reasons to go into red-green, which is why it was the only D-grade archetype, is there's not a reason to go into it late. Red-green is the only archetype in the format that doesn't match the thesis of seeing what comes late, because the stuff that comes late is still not powerful enough to justify you shifting, right? Like, getting a late Boost Buggy doesn't mean go into red-green. Now, it might mean go into Teamer, but that's the important thing, right? Is like the thesis tells you that all the archetypes encourage you to be late because you will get a +5 win rate on common late. And +2, right? But red-green doesn't get that advantage, right? So that approach makes that archetype worse as a result. Now, you might still be into it because, I don't know, you open the 8/8 Trampler and you open some other red bomb, right? Like, so there are other reasons. Then we look into starts your engines, like basically the Mardu colors, right? This I took time on. It's basically like, there's a lot here. I don't want to spend too much time necessarily here. I'm not doing the presentation for you. This is like to give you perspective on how to try to prepare for high level limited. But the important part here is giving perspective to the team on how start your engines works, right? The left side is kind of your setup, and the right side is your payoff. Hazoret's in the middle because it's both, as are Snare and Far Fortune. Samut we'll talk about Samut in a bit, but like Samut specifically doesn't fit that mold, but is very powerful. So, as a result, I said that we're talking about Samut later, so we will talk about Samut later. And then I got one last meme in there. This was like, so at the house, Calcano, like we talked about this, Calcano drafted a deck with it, and every time he'd play the card, he'd alt top, play the music, play the card, win that way, so that was great. Some good times. But yeah, so like, I'll also do archetype look-ins on alternative strategies. This is one of them. I did mention that it's not a meme to watch out. So like, if you start seeing the cycling cards not coming back, that to me is an alarm bell, because why aren't they coming back? Or if you see Push the Limit, Push the Limit is like a perfect example of a card you're sending as a scout, and if the scout comes back with "I'm not here," that tells you, all right, gotta be careful here. And then like just explaining how the archetypes work, right? You take some of these, like Broodwagon is obviously great, Path Cruiser is great, but like you kind of take these cards straight, win. Okay. So explain the archetype. I just let them know it is playable. It's not a meme. Then I usually have this slide. It's pack 1 value up. Surprise, surprise, anything that's mana fixing is here. Especially in this set, because a lot of the good rares and mythics are splashable, so might as well set up. And it's also because pack 1, I'm not telling them to take this P1, P1 or something. I'm saying most of the cards after P1, P5 roughly are going to be kind of weak, because people in pack 1 tend to take the best card in the pack, regardless of colors, right? Because of the drafting the hard way thing. So like, as a result, if you have a mediocre playable or a dual land, it's usually reasonable to take the dual land, because chances are you won't miss the mediocre playable, but you will miss the mana fixing if you did need it, right? So it's like contingency. That's why like the pack 1 value goes up, is if you need the mana fixing, you are desperate for it. Whereas, like, do you really need like the last card in your deck most of the time? Probably not. So that's why it's there. All right. Then I have the difficult to place cards. So these are cards that for various reasons, are difficult to quantify. Something that was important for Marshall's Path Cruiser is mistakes happen, right? I didn't realize the Scurry Foot combo with it, right? You play that on turn free. Scurry Foot exhaust is just straight up 5. But it's essentially giving them tools on powerful cards that don't have an obvious home. So Explosive Getaway, the reason I put it here is super powerful card, probably not a Boros card though. So like, how do you make it work? Depends, right? There's not really a straight up home for it. This is where like also an archetype picture might be good to show like, okay, this deck played it, it worked out, etc. Yeah, right guys. Yeah, hopefully it's been insightful, Grant. Yeah, Gateway can be a blue-white card, but like I've seen like free color green decks double splashing for it. Like there's a lot you can do with that type of effect. And I've seen it in blue-white and the deck went 0-3. Like it's best not to when I put it here, I'm saying don't gate this card because the card is too versatile, strange to gate. You have to like re-qualify your perspective. Path Cruiser we just found was very powerful, but we didn't really have a good reason to lock as to why it was so powerful. So I kind of said like to the team, this is powerful, don't let it slip, but you know, might be trouble locating. Turns out it's best in Esper, but it's good in a bunch of archetypes. And then Samut, I came back to it, right, with like Calcano drafted a deck with this and Streaking Oil Gorger. So like it was like almost 4-color, almost double splashing for it, but it made sense because you want the start of your engines to be like a little different. So it was using like Gilded Goda to make treasures. So it was using a card that's quite weak to power up something that's quite powerful. So those are ways you can explain to the team like this card doesn't have a straight up home, but these are contexts in which you could envision the thing. So yeah, cool. Then this slide is buyer beware. So unlike overrated underwear cards, this is where I placed the stuff that the team thought was good. The glider I explained a lot and I gave it context, right? So this is where I place stuff for me that I haven't had the chance to explain and still have issues. So one of the big things is our team was getting excited with Deathless Pilot because it was saddling in the white decks because of the value with Thunderhead Gunner. And the big thing I was saying was like, yes, that's nice and cute, but you're taking it a little highly here. So it was like kind of reassessing it, giving them perspective. You got to be careful with these random 2-drops. Walking Sarcophagus was the same. I was seeing it in decks that weren't like exclusively start your engines. I was like, no. Like when you have something like this, context is everything. Don't play Walking Sarcophagus outside of the home it needs to be in. And the home it needs to be in, it's a very good 23rd playable. Without it, it's almost unplayable, right? So it's like perspectiving it for the people, right? For the team, it's going, context is everything. And then Roadside Blowout, what was important was I could have put a bunch of cards here, and they didn't specifically overrate the repulse. But it was, because you're trying to see later on what's good, don't get married to something average, right? So like, it's a very okay card, so that's cool, but like it's often like +1, right? So like for me, I'd take it in a pack with like nothing and just go like, okay, but whatever, might as well not exist until I know what's up, and if I'm in blue, I'll play it. But I'm not. It's basically telling the team, if your early picks have medium value, like they're reasonable cards but nothing special, you might as well ignore their existence, and because it goes against the thesis to overvalue cards that are not in this +5 range, right? And when I mean +5, I mean like Involved Descendant, the free 4 green-white creature, stuff that like really defines archetypes. So like if I say +5, it means a card that like defines your deck. It is a definitional card. All right, then I go into card combos. These are actually really short. MH3 had 20 slides on this. This set had free because all of the card combos were in context of their archetype. So these are like the last remnants of what was left. So it was like Deathless Pilot and Gunner. It was Dredger's Insight and Rumbler, Moltender. And this combo without the Maximum Overdrive is actually how I lost my PDQ top 8. So like I had the Serpent and Starting Column, and Sam Black had the Diver and then played the Blockbuster, and that And then like I missed some land drops and lost. We played like 2 non-games in games 1 and 3, and then this combo in game 2. I mean, credit to him, he identified and played it, like against my deck. But these are the kind of things that can give you real edges. So these card combos can matter, right? Like in the case of my PDQ top 8 match, I was on the receiving end of it. But like that's why I highlighted it, is if Blockbuster and Diver you'll get for free, and they can really turn the tide. So like it's important to give to teammates, especially the card combos that take like the lowest level of playables. That's the best card combos, because they'll get these cards late and they'll be able to leverage high value. Something that I didn't do in this that I wish I did were sideboard cards, because I would put Blockbuster in it alongside others. It's really important to identify for the team, if they look at data, right? Like what are BO free cards? Like cards that are really much better in best of free, and Blockbuster would have been one of them, right? Because there's the, you're against the artifacts deck. So then this is like the card synergy, like why this works. Something important to note is when a set's known later, there's somebody in the 17 lands community that creates a synergy tool. And the synergy tool, like you take card A and card B, and you get to see their combined win rate. Like, so you get to see if the cards are synergistic. So for Dustmorn, we did that a lot because I got to see more info. But those are usually a couple of weeks after the set. The set's too new, so there wasn't much. This is the only one that was remaining. But it was essentially like these 2 cards match perfectly, right? It's like why it works out that these cards are +2 in Esper artifacts is because if you're being aggressive, you're being low on resources, like it still works. And if you're being on defense, this is perfect. So like very important. Okay. Then I go into secret gold cards. So this is going to take a while. I'm not going to necessarily dive into them. If you watch the VOD, you can just pause. But it's basically giving the team it's highlighting to the team opportunities that tell you want to be in these colors, and like especially if stuff is wheeling, right? So for example, a Grim Javelineer no one wants, but like for example, Pride of the Road, I would certainly pass, and if it comes back, I'm like, oh, I might be in black-white. But if it doesn't come back, and I start noticing black-white cards get taken, that might avoid a disaster, right? So it's like, that perspective is what's going on. It's good to put here, like, stuff that's good but particularly powerful, or cards that no one wants, like Swiftwing Assailant and Grim Javelineer. No one wants these cards. So, like, in black-white, you get these cards for free late, right? So if you, like, are pack 2 and open it, you're like, and you're not sure, like, well, at least I get +1 playable, right? And then you're like, see the Javelineer, P1, P2, P2, and you're like, oh, I'll get 2 playables. So that way you're like already assured that like your playable count is high before you even continue the pack, because they'll come back. Yeah, like Swiftwing had great data in black-white. Specifically in black-white. I guess there's like some weird Boros builds, but again, 15 lands doesn't really want that many 4-drops, but it's fine. Yeah, thank you, Sarepta. Yeah. Then we go into blue-black. So like I'll go for this. So like cards that are better in blue-black that might signal you blue-red. The Diver was good, so that took a while to figure out. It was because pushing damage is nice. Some of the blue-red builds need speed, so Diver helps, and it's really good with a 6-free vehicle. So specifically the 6-free vehicle, the problem is like none of the blue-red cards really work with it except Diver. So that was interesting. Also, that's why the Thopterus is decent in blue-red. Blue-red doesn't have many bodies. It doesn't have much board presence. And it crews the 6-free vehicle with Menace. So, like, interestingly, the 6-free vehicle doesn't necessarily have the best stats in blue-red specifically. But these cards are telling you, because you're probably taking that 6-free vehicle in blue-red because of cycling, that's the synergy you want to do. So, like, that's the perspective. Then I go in black-red. So we notice Dynamite Diver. This is where stats don't help you. Was like identifying that like we found good success in the speed builds with Diver, right? If you get like that Start Your Engine card 2 or free, or Place Oblivion, which is good in black-red specifically, then Diver is something you want. Yeah. Then we go into green-white, which I called green aggro. It was like green-white is basically base green and a few white cards unless you go into the 15-line white deck. We were seeing like Silken Strength. Bestow Greatness was doing really well. And anything that like put boards on the body plus card advantage, like Fang Druid, was super good. And obviously Bestow Greatness, Silken Strength come late. Then I look at black-green / free color green. Like both black-green and free color green benefit from these cards. So we were seeing like Back on Track, Mole Tender, Mole Bike, Summoner, Patrol doing well. So interestingly, this was fun. Diversion Unit and Thopter Fabricator, especially Thopter Fabricator, was not doing well. And we were wondering why. And eventually we realized that Thopter Fabricator was being put in the blue-green decks, and when I checked data, I was like, yes, this is a bomb in everything that is not blue-green. So we have so like it's important because I knew the team was down on Thopter Fabricator to go, no, it is good, but just don't pair it with green. So pair it with something else. So it helps align biases in the house. It helps like to notice as well in the house like pain points that people have and make sure to mention them so that they don't absorb those pain points and make the wrong decision at the Pro Tour. So this over underrated card, I did I actually, because it was a long time because there were a lot of questions from the team, so I did a participatory exercise. I was asking people what they thought were overrated and underrated cards. So I want to see in chat, what do you think are overrated cards in the set? Common, uncommon, rares. I want to see if you can guess some of these before I put them up. I know some people are watching late, so I'll give you like a minute-ish. Let's see what you can come up with. Because that suck. Man, the stream delay must be really high. I mean, most of you are probably. Honestly, don't know. Wrangler underrated. What's Wrangler again? Remind me. District Mascot. Okay, District Mascot, I'm guessing. A rare mythic would probably be underrated. So we got District Mascot overrated. Oh, the 4-free? Okay, 4-free underrated. Okay. Okay. The White Ox. Oh, Bulwark. Okay. Bulwark overrated. Monument. Okay. Yep. All right. Endurance. So Monument of Endurance, not River Train. Yeah. No, I know. Don't worry. I got you, bud. Howlers. Okay, underrated Howlers. Cool. Lightning Strike overrated. Okay. Lightning Strike overrated. Starting Column. Okay. In U. Skycrash is an interesting call. I will say that. Grimbauble in what? Overrated or underrated? Ivor's underrated. Mangler. So Mangler was the 4-free, right? Was the 4-free been performing well and I haven't been aware? Bobble overrated. All right. I think we got a few. So, interestingly, common and uncommon. These are the overrated cards. Scurryfoot. I think I don't have Scurryfoot. Maybe I do actually in underrated. I doubt it, but I'll check. Because you have to remember, it's like cards I believe will be underrated too. Like it could be underrated on 17 lands, but I believe at the PT, like it won't be. I might not mention it. That's an important thing. It's like I'm trying to like visualize how Pro Tour players would do too. Yeah, so Apocalypse Runner, the Canyon Vaulter, Cloud Spider, Rise in Necro Region was interesting because it wasn't performing well, and I was wondering why. And it came out to be that the decks that are Start Your Engines want to finish the game. They're not interested in prolonging it. That's where like data can be interesting. Is like it's not fitting into your game plan. Your game plan is to like free haste them and kill them, not to make bodies and give them time to play a 6/6 that gains 4. Mech Cycle is so the problem with Mech Cycle is you can play it into a 1/1 Death Toucher or you can play it into a 6/6. Both of those don't sound terrible, by the way. It also implies that you have spare vehicles and mounts, which means not great. So the problem with Mech Cycle is everything is either very small and doesn't care to block. Double blocking is very common, and you have to tap out for this, or or you just go above and beyond. So like Mech Cycle is just wrong format for it. Outpace Oblivion is because like everybody thinks it's ultra strong. Then RMs. So the Ox and the Monument to Endurance, good call, for sure overrated. So the Ox is super interesting, right? Because everybody at the house thought it was good, and the question, and it's why it's important to ask yourself why. It's I agree the Ox should be a good card. Oh fuck's sake, ads are starting. Sorry for the language. Well, I'll get through this, and then before we go to underrated cards, we'll do that. But yeah, the Ox should be a good card, but the problem is the hit back is from very large creatures, and you have to tap out. So like taking 6 back is a lot. The creature sizing doesn't work in a way to make the Ox work. It's not like many people don't have 2 frees; they have free 2s. So what are we doing attacking with the Ox and having to play something to saddle it first, which means you're probably tapping out. So the Ox doesn't work in the way the set works, and then the rest of this stuff is kind of straightforward. You won't believe how much I had to insist that Wax and Shape Thief was terrible. It took me 3 drafts with the team to finally convince them not to put Wax and Shape Thief in their decks. It was bad. I'm like, oh, but it has cycling. I'm like, great. Your terrible card has cycling. It doesn't matter because it's not a clone. Copying the thing you have is really bad. Anyways, so the ad's going to start in 3 seconds. I'll see you after that. So we're waiting for the ad to finish if you're watching on VOD. I think the ad's playing. So somebody tell me if the ad's not playing. By the way, I'm doing like VOD chat in the meantime. Oh. Ad's not playing. Oh, cool. Cool. We can continue. I'm fine with... okay, the ad's not playing. I'm happy. Let's continue. Okay, cool. Excellent. I'm glad about this. So, let me know, by the way, if it changed. If the ads plays, just let me know in chat. So, the big thing, right, is District Mascot has a very high opening hand win rate. So, like, specifically as a 1-drop, it's very powerful. And the buyout mode in the late game of attacking plus sack is, as you say, very important. So, it works out. Oh, the ad break started. I'm just responding to people. You can skip a minute if you're on VOD. All right, we should be back. All right. So yeah, so just to respond, basically the Sky Sears Chariot, the reason it's there is in our group we were overrating it, and the win rate's really low. And online they were overrating it, so I put it as overrated. But obviously, if nobody's drafting white, self corrects. Culloden is just bad. Like, I mean, it requires work, and you're tapping out pre-combat, so you can't like play it and have a trick. You can't like, it doesn't. Now, obviously, it might be fine if you're doing like the thing I described with 2+1 in some spots, but the free one is just so much better. Like, both because it's good when you're behind of being able to dig to what you need, and it creates material. Whereas the 2 free doesn't really do any of this stuff. And if mech cycle's not working, Culloden by default shouldn't work either. But yeah, the goal uncommon is just way better. But like Culloden is bad because of that, so. But yeah, and the problem with the Ox, yes, it plays well with combat tricks. How are you making that work? Right? It's like, I need to play a thing to saddle it. Probably something from my hand. So like, and I need mana up. Like, it doesn't really work out. That's why Ox is not working. So and Lightning Strike, by the way, why it's not an overrated is like people were starting to take it lower. We were noticing, because it's a common, so it wasn't like being overpicked, and it still like has utility, so it's not terrible. Yeah, but I don't want to play Colin in a 2/2 double strike equipment. I'd rather just play good cards. It's just, my philosophy, by the way, with limited in general is, yes, there are synergy payoffs at work, but could you at least play something that's good in the first place? Cloudspire Cycle is not a real playable card because it's not actually a material. It requires material, and it's 4 mana. So like you're stuck in 17 lands. You're stuck with not enough material, and in 15 land builds, you're stuck with the fact that it's a 4 mana card. It's just so much. Yeah, the Ox just asks too much of you. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, but like, see, so like you could play Kaladin, right? But like what I'm saying about overrated cards is not they're unplayable. It's if you got Kaladin P1 P10, sure, I'd play that. But I don't take it P1 P2 P1 P3, which is what was happening, right? It's the what I mean by overrated cards often is these cards might have a home. But what happens is most people take them far earlier than any way reasonably if you drafted this set correctly, they take them earlier than any way you would be able to pick them correctly. So like it's like if Kaladin was like a card that was late that was telling you to go in Boros, that's fine. But people are taking it aggressively early. So as a result, it's overrated. It's people are taking it sooner. Like Monument to Endurance, I think is playable, but people are taking it P1, P2, P1, P3, whereas it's more like blue-red, P1, P7 style thing, right? So as a result, you're not playing the card because someone else is overrating it. So like, yes, these cards have homes, but because our people are taking them too highly, you won't be able to play them. That's kind of what this is. Right. Yeah. Like call it in P1, P8 makes sense, and it's a fine 2-drop, but right. But like, what I mean by overrated is people are over indexing on it, right? The engine's the same thing. People take it P1, P1, and the engine's fine, but I wouldn't P1, P1 it. Like if I got it P1, P5, I'd be like, okay, that's the direction. So underrated cards. We had Hollower's Heavy. Congrats, that was a good pickup. Scurryfoot was there. So like again. This was early on, so, you know, I would probably say the green comments are not underrated, really. But they were. So Flood the Engine turned out to just be really the straight up good blue common. Spectral Interference was just coming late and just had its home in a lot of BO free homes. It's pretty nice in the blue-red cycling deck, for example, because often you'll pass with 2 mana up and disguise it. So that's kind of nice. Catch Your Dawn is not underrated at all right now. I would say that, by the way, if you're drafting, Scurryfoot is like the real green common you want. Catch Your Dawn needs homes. But, Engine Rat, Javelineer is like... So also what's important with underrated is I'm not saying these cards are the best. I'm saying they're underrated. So like Javelineer is a free card. Right? No one's taking your Grim Javelineer from you. If they do, I would be alarm bells in my head. But because it's decent in red-black and in black-white, so, it's wheeling, but it's an underrated card, right? Like, it's coming to you for free. Embalmed Descendant, unbelievable card. That's why it's there. It comes like P1, P7 or something on average back when we were doing the analysis for the PT. Something really stupid. Like, yeah. And then the Monument was like the one underrated rare in the set because people didn't get it. It's obviously stupid. If you've played this format, you know that River Churn Monument is really dumb. Howler plus Death Touch was important. I didn't talk about it in card combos, but like it came up for sure. It's just a messed up card, right? This is Embalmed Descendant is a free 4 for free mana with 2 material pieces that starts your engine on turn 3 if you need it, and then once you get there in the late game, it means you've dealt damage to get the engines up, so you're probably very interested in the max speed ability. It's just a lot of stats for like it's stats plus stuff. It's just a very strong card. That's all it is. That's the big thing. So that was the last slide, by the way. Yeah, so the big takeaway, right, is from Aetherdrift Limited, is that like the people, when we went to the Pro Tour, we realized that like people were thinking in terms of colors, like green's the best color and all that. And the problem with this set is it is quite balanced. So like our team ended up drafting Mardu colors a lot because yes, the set's balanced, but everyone's already green. So as a result, everybody's drafting Mardu. Andrea, though, the reason you don't say to draft Mardu and forcing it is because Andrea had the 8-8, the Rex, and very good teamer decks that came out of it in those colors. So he went 6-0 unlimited with green, but green was open for him. So that's why you don't tell people to force stuff, is because sometimes the seed tells you to do the thing. And what would happen with our team is often the seed was telling them they can't be in green. So like our teammates were doing very well drafting non-green decks because they were being taught how to approach the format holistically to make sense of their seat. And because everybody was over drafting green, as a result, you draft the rest. So this format's actually quite balanced. It's a question of understanding that like there's so many powerful cards that only one person might be interested at the table maximum. So like you need to engineer yourself in that seat. And because everybody else was thinking in terms of colors, they weren't thinking in terms of how do I position myself to keep myself open and to make sure I draft what's best at my table, right? How do I 3-0 my table? When you look at the results, blue-red was 3-0ing a lot because it's one of those min-max archetypes. There were a lot of good uncommons, most likely to be in that open seat. And obviously because of the critical mass, right, of like, there are 2 decent rares in the archetype plus 3 uncommons. Like, all of that means that, like, if you were in blue-red, you were the most likely to max out your seat. But if you force blue-red and there are free 2 drafters, which has happened in our house, the decks were not doing very well. So that was important. When there were, like, clashes in our seats, we were seeing the decks weren't doing well. So that's why we went away from the forcing strategy, right? That's that. All right. So that's it for the thing. I'm not going to close. If you have questions about what I like is not so much questions about the format, although you're welcome to if there's something you haven't approached yet. It's more questions about the approach, like about what I'm looking for into data, like how do I assemble this, how do you communicate, like those are the topics that I'm happy to respond because you're not going to get that expertise elsewhere. I know it because I've talked to enough people that I know you won't get that expertise. Do I have thoughts on in what ways process should look different for teams who don't have someone in your role? Yeah. So somebody, okay. So obviously you say non-qualified but invested expert. If I was qualified, I would do the same process. I'd probably just ask for help in constructed, right? Or like dial down my constructed prep or whatever it is. But okay, let's say there's not somebody who has an oversight view. I'm trying to write this stuff up, by the way, but it's going to take months. I divided my role in 3 ways. So let me read. I will read your point as well, Daniel. Let me read the 3 roles I embody quickly, because I have it here. I'm not going to show this today, but I don't think I'm showing it. No, it's good. Okay. So, like, I have 3 roles. I'm leading limited, straight up, right? I'm the limited lead. I'm the person who does the meeting, who makes the calls. That stuff. I'm talking about the vision. I'm doing the presentation. I'm looking at information. And I'm making sure that, like, we're synced on limited. So I have 3 roles. One of them is leader. 2 is I'm the communication steward. Now, that can be the leader too, but this is somebody who, for example, during the draft reviews, is the go-to person. This is the person that helps make sure that the point gets across. They dial down the hype on the stuff that doesn't merit it. They make sure that information's contextualized. They make sure that, like, we have the takeaways. They're the person that's, like, kind of on the ground, making sure that everybody is up to speed. But, like, unlike the leader who has, like, more the vision, they're more like the person, like, on the day, on the ground doing it. Basically, they're responsible for the group on site. So, like, the leader could be someone like me who's off site. But if I'm outside, I want the communication steward, so somebody who can take care of, during the draft review, what are we paying attention to be a role as well. And then the third role is like the data analyst. You need somebody who's capable of analyzing data. And I don't mean like strong analysis. I just mean like looking past sorting by GIHWR. Like, okay, let me check. What's the story behind this card? What's the opening hand win rate? What does it look like? What are the archetypes? Does it perform well in some archetypes? Not. Like somebody who can go a bit deeper into 17 lands data than just, again, sorting. So those are the three, right? Leader, communication steward, and data analyst. So if there's not somebody like me who can do it, you want to divide those roles up because then it's less pressure on one person, right? So like one person might lead, one person is on the ground, and then one person analyzes. So for example, the person on the ground will ask the data analyst to check stuff. The data analyst will check stuff. That could be someone remote or on site. And then the communication steward will give to the leader. These are kind of our findings, and the leader will be in charge of vision, communication, making sure everybody's set up, making sure everybody has what they need. All right. So I have Parako and Daniel. Give me a second. So seems like the draft scouts and paying attention to the wheel taxes memory highly. Do you help the less experienced limited players with technique for tracking this during the draft? So one thing we are considering is indeed how do you improve just technical play? Because our team has generally World League Council. I love my teammates and all, but like because we're taking a lot of first timers and stuff, like technical play is going to be less good than people who won the World Championship and other stuff, won Pro Tours, multiple top 8s, etc. So like I help them the most on making sure when they sit at a table they come out with the best deck possible. I think that limited is lifelong learning. So like technique, so like we can help them with technical play, but it can be interrupting. So like that's still something for us to improve because it can be like a really strong clash. Like for example, I spotted something that like on a play that was wrong, but then like it disrupted the match. So like that's really hard to do properly, right? Like the right approach is to check it after the game / match is done to go like, oh, by the way, this is how I would approach that. On the memory taxing, if a teammate comes out, it's more like I showed them how to do it, right? I'm like, okay, let's say you got your first pick, because P1 is actually really easy. It's really just a card quality check. It's just what's the best card. All right, P1 super easy. P1 is super hard. So like during P1, it's usually a 10-second decision with a 40-second decision time. So you have 30 seconds to sort out the bottom 6 cards, right? So that's what I teach them. I go like, okay, you figured out you need to take this. That was good. Okay, now can you show me the 6 cards that you believe will come back? And then I ask them to take a picture, and when it comes back, to guess, and there's a missing card. I go like, before you see the picture, what was there? And then like, so we do try to help teammates with like memory exercising, improving their skills, etc. Okay, so did you have thoughts on deprioritize colors, staying flexible? My plan was just to be flexible for my seats. So, I mean, that's the thesis for me, right? So some sets are not about staying open. So like Dustmorn for me, I hate that set, but it's not about... So it's only about staying... So it's... Dustmorn was a set which was about locking it in. So like either you got your powerful, rare, or mythic and you ran with it, or you don't. And if you don't, you need to stay open to get one by luck. And if you have it, then run with it. So it was more an approach of like, don't be flexible if you've already got the powerful card, and do be flexible if you don't. So it was like flexibility is a relative term, right? So like if you start with loot, I would not be flexible. But as a result as well, that's why I don't talk about... In other sets, I do talk about colors. For example, I go like, if you go in this color, there's only like 2 archetypes and it doesn't really work out, so I would deprioritize that. This set is not that, right? It's super open, so like it's a different message. It's like, try to find the message for the set you're doing. Yeah, so knowing how to use every card is so important, as you said. I should have drafted Boros at the PT due to medium late uncommons like the free 4-drop. Free 4-drop uncommon. Can you name that card, by the way? I'm struggling here. Another signals it's flowing but staying green but wasn't flowing. Yeah, like so like, because pack 1 everybody takes the best card, and then you get what's going on pack 2. And when you're open, you're able to switch. If you're not open, you can't take the signal you're receiving, right? The Minotaur is terrible. I wouldn't bother with that. That free 4-drop is not playable. Don't worry about it. That's not a... Like, I wouldn't worry. So it sounds like you had a few situations where you're able to look at the data and see stuff like Thunderhead Gunner winning for the wrong reasons in Boros. What gets you to dig into stories like that? Reports from the players and pots. That's an excellent question. You're not gonna like necessarily this answer, but part of it is experience. I've been in enough spots in different limited formats that I know what I'm looking for, and it's also like what story makes sense, right? There are stories that are biased, right? That are stories that we want to tell ourselves. And then there are stories that match reality. So I was noticing, because Boros didn't have good commons and uncommons, right? So I was going like, how is this playable? And then when you realize that at the house, the decks that were winning were the low land count Boros decks, I go like, okay, so the land decks with more material are winning, which implies that the decks that are Boros online are losing because they don't have enough materials, which means they're playing too many lands. So as a result of that, the expensive drops are performing better because they're solving the overabundance of the wrong type of material problem. So that's why Gunner's performing well in Boros, is because it's solving the problem of that deck as it normally is built online. Whereas when you build it differently, and in my view correctly, you don't need to solve that problem. You're doing it in deck construction. Whereas the people online that are drafting the deck are doing it with cards. You're doing it with deck. So like, it's like how... It's basically like, what is the story telling me? That's the journey. It's what's the journey, etc. And like the reports from the players in the pods is important. That's why we do the in-house testing too. And by the way, please like ask questions. This is high level Magic. You're not gonna get, honestly, you're not gonna get this type of content elsewhere. Again, I know I'm not trying to like I'm putting some light because it's dark. I'm not trying to be like difficult about it or tell you like people couldn't do this. I think people with training, you could learn and you could do this. It's just, this isn't a typical way to think. And it's performed well for us, so. Yeah, so Daniel, when you got that 8th pick Bulwark, see, that's the example where, so like when we go back to overrated cards, right? Your table correctly valued Bulwark Ox, but that does tell you that they're leaving that class of card alone. So that's when you should have jumped. I don't think the Minotaur's a nothing card, don't worry. But the Ox coming back 8th does tell you what's up. That's where you should have jumped for sure. Okay. So, one more question. What is the structure of the sets that creates a difference you mentioned between Dustmourne and Aetherdrift with respect to staying open? Okay. So with Dustmourne, when I looked, and I removed the first 3 days of data and then week, when I looked at like, because I look a lot for, especially for overrated, underrated, and for a lot of reasons, like, pick orders. So I'll look at like average last seen at. You can take Ivor, they're fine. It's not like it's an idea. And then like I'll sort it by average last seen at, and then I'll look at the win rate. And then like if the win rate is too high, too low for like a pick that's early, or too high for a pick that's late, that's when I'll start looking. So for example, Dustmourne, there was apart from the gold cards for obvious reasons, there was almost like a correlation between pick order and win rate. That was like, so with Dustmourne, no one was making mistakes with picks. I mean, they are in the absolute, but not really. That's why I hate Dustmourne, by the way. It's like brain dead drafting. So I was realizing that why are you trying to stay open? Because there's nothing to collect. It's the reverse of Aetherdrift. There are no good cards coming to you late in Dustmourne. Blue-red rooms are a little exception, but for the quasi most part of Dustmourne, the cards that people think are good, and that's the end of the story. So in that sense, it's like, well, you kind of have to just open the stuff, and like I'll give you as much info I can on the bottom end of the range, but you know what's good. So that's it. That's why the two are so different. Appreciate you being here, Trejo. Glad you enjoyed it. Thunderhead Gunner. So by the way, this is why we do the testing in-house. Is data's important, but the testing in-house is a necessary complement. We really like Thunderhead Gunner. We see it as the top red common. But what was important is, right, like, so people like to think in terms of top common, blah, blah, blah stuff, right? That's not important for me. Like, Chrysalis, Riving Chrysalis, is the top green-red common of MH3. Sure, Thunderhead Gunner is probably the top, maybe Scrapefoot is, but you know what I mean? Like, is the top common of green-red. It has nothing to do. Chrysalis is a mythic rare. And Thunderhead Gunner is a good common. So what matters to me is the level. It's how important is this? And like Thunderhead Gunman is a good card, but it doesn't make me deviate, right? Like it's not strong enough for me to hold the fort, like on what I took, and it's not weak enough. And it's not coming late enough that like I can get a signal from it. It's a good card, but I'm not gonna force red with it, and I'm not gonna like jump in. I mean, if I gotta pick 8 or 9, I guess, but that never happens, right? Really, not at like a reasonable level of play. So like Thunderhead Gunner is a good example of a card that doesn't define the direction of your draft because it's not strong enough to lock you. It's not coming late enough to get you in there. The Minotaur, so you pick 3/4 cards, you got Bulwark, then the Minotaur, so you're Naya, then pack 2, you get red rares, so I can move into Boros more than Naya. Yeah. So by the way, like this is where it's important to so I don't like card evaluating because it's very hard for the human brain to remember 250 identical things, which is why I'm talking in terms of archetypes every single time. But the Minotaur is just not a card. Like the rating's very low, it doesn't do much, so you put maybe too much traction on it. It's really important that you have an idea where the traction should be. Like if you got the 1/1 glider late and the Ox late, I'd be like, yeah, there's an aggressive white deck at the table for sure. That's the lesson. Yeah, you drafted Delirium in DSK. Yeah, but like I was helping the team test for the World Championship, and if online average arena drafters are correctly evaluating the rares and mythics, trust me, at the World Championships they're getting it right. Yeah, Found Footage was one of the few underrated cards in DSK. That is a excellent spot. One of the most important underrated cards, actually. The slide was from 17 lands data. So 17's land... No, so it's a mix. It's data plus house drafts. It's like a mix, right? It's the data, the house drafts, and the impressions. And it's the transformed combination of all this into what I would believe as a result. Like, it is data... It's basically... The angle I go with is it's data informed. It's not data led, it's data informed. So it's like the Thunderhead Gunner and Boros example, right? We have the house draft that say that 15 land Boros decks are performing well. Okay, why? They're drafted less because everybody's drafting green. That makes sense. Why is Thunderhead Gunner performing? We like Gunner, but this is an overperformance. And then you look at online, and I'm like, okay, the data setting Gunner's working in Boros, but we're finding these 15 lands. And then you piece it together, right? It's all these little elements. The house drafts, the online data, and all of this is piecing it together. Waxed and Shape Thief, if I listen to the house drafts, Waxed and Shape Thief would be one of the better rares in the set. But I look online because it tells me it's bad. Reversely, the Boros cards, we flipped with the house information because it's a 15 land draft deck. So that changes card evaluations immensely from what you see online. So it's all a question of context. It's when does the online information matter and when does the house information matter? And a lot of people will either go with one or the other. And not combining them is a big mistake I see in a vast majority of limited prep across the board for Pro Tour. It's a lot of people will not deviate or will not listen. And it's you have to do both. Yeah, and by the way, this stuff translates into non-pot drafts. I use this for arena opens too. Like, I don't go this far when I'm just, there's not a PT, but because when you're drafting day one on the arena opens, especially day two, like, people will know what they're doing. So like there's a if you start looking at some of the arena day one and day two and the win rates, the underdrafted archetypes are still winning more. Because while it's not a pod draft, it's still happening. So for example, if you take Bloomborough, Blue Red had a really top performance at the arena open. And if you drafted online, if you saw the online data from Bloomborough like before the first arena open with it, you would think Blue Red is unplayable. But it turned out that within the archetype there were a lot of really key super late cards. So like it's even in like it's like basically for like mid to high level drafting, people tend to know what's up. So like this process is still important even with arena opens, because while it isn't pod drafted, if I know green is overdrafted, I still want to draft the best deck in my table, because even if I'm not playing against everybody else, I still need the best deck possible. So like if I'm fighting for green with my neighbors, then I'm in trouble. So like yeah, that's so this approach does work online. It's not just Pro Tours. Okay. Is there specific stuff you think winning players are more commonly getting wrong when they look at stats? Well, yeah. Let's get 17 lines up. Tell you what. Can I do this? Yeah. Let's just open the site. So you're gonna see. Let's go into card data. So by the way, one thing that's really important. I'm gonna do this as if I was doing the Open, so not the Pro Tour. But once there's at least 10 days of data, I eliminate the first 3 days, and if there's 4 weeks, I eliminate the first week or two, because I want to be up to date on my limited metagame. So in this case, we're going to remove everything up till about the Saturday, because I'm not interested in the first couple of days anymore. I'm more interested in like what's the up-to-date meta. I think we can actually remove maybe even that weekend. Let's see. Winning players getting commonly run. Right. So first one is they do this. They sort, they go, great. That's it. End of story. So they do that super wrong. That's just wrong. Things they don't do right. They don't look enough. First thing first is you should be using whatever you've been using this tab at, all decks. That tab for those 2 caller decks should be your religion. So like if you're drafting and you're starting to be in a caller, you should 100% like sort like this. This is all that matters. This is irrelevant once you're in an archetype, right? After like, if you know, like let's say I start with, I don't know, loot, and I'm getting blue-green cards. I'm going to start going into UG, and this is my new Bible. Like, nothing else matters. And you already see loot is lower, right? So that might also tell me, like, and it's lower because people aren't probably not building it properly and stuff. So, like, that's a, yeah. So, like, you should only care about archetypes. Like, the general thing is not worth it. If anything, actually, when you start drafting. So, one of the things I do, you can do this without the premium data, by the way, like, you could, what you can do is open multiple 17 land tabs. So like if you take a red card, you can open 4 tabs and put all 4 red archetypes in 4 separate tabs and look at the 4 archetypes. So like, let's say I start with Draconics Engineer, right? I'll do the free version. So like, I'm going to open 3 more tabs. You can prepare these in advance. Oh, sorry, wrong click. Card data. So I'm going to look at, so I need to sort out the date range. So it's the same, of course. So this, and this. I'm gonna like go like, okay, I got this red card, so I got 40 seconds. I'm gonna just screenshot, because online you can screenshot, right? I'll go white, red. Then we got UR, and then we got BR, and then we got RG, right? So I'm looking at, okay, I got Draconics Engineer, red, white. It's fine, very good. I am gonna have this here, top range, right? So like, oh wow, Draconics Engineer, black, red, wow. So like I'm already leaning a little bit, right? And then like as I pick cards, I'm leaning them in the archetypes. So like I'm going like red card or black card, for example. I'm going like, well, this red card in black, red is the same power level, so I should stay open because of that. So you're not doing this enough for sure. No, nobody is. You should only be drafting in archetypes. Like it's irrelevant to draft general. So that's the first mistake that most pros do, is they don't know how to filter data, like in general. So next thing is, when things are weird, you need to start looking at like the win rate when main decked. Like, is this card good, or is because like let's say a card is an overperformer, but the win rate when main deck is low. So for example, in Aetherdrift it doesn't really match too much, but okay, so this is an example. Like no, Ipex is a terrible example. Give me a second. Let me find something that makes sense to me. Yeah, so this might work. Yeah, so for example, I have... Oh, wrong line. Okay, I have Terrian World Tyrant, right? Nothing too special in green. But like the green decks with it are performing really well when a main deck, because when you have this, you probably have the 2/4. So like, you know that like... So like it's overperforming when main decked, because the deck construction is probably better on curve, right? You probably have the 2/4 into this because you're incentivized to have that pair of uncommons if you're playing this 9/7. So like the win, so those green decks are stronger than they should be in this range, right? So that's like stuff you can do. You can look, like I look, for example, at win rate against pick orders. So like I'll go ALSA, for example, pick orders, and then I'm like, oh, win rate. So these cards are overvalued. Like, Chandra is good, but not like necessarily first pickable. I need to like explore. You can also like filter stuff with improvement with drawn. It's not perfect, but like it gives you an idea. Like, you know, market back walker, everybody picks this first, but like it's just okay. like you probably want something else. So like they're not looking enough at this style of stuff to go like, what are other people doing, right? They're not also like going like, what are other people doing so that I can leverage what other people do. Because as much as like others don't use data, like not even accepting that others use data is the biggest mistake, right? It's going, other people will use this, so what are they doing and what can I do to leverage what they're doing? Super important stuff. So okay, we're coming back to questions. So thank you, Andre, by the way. So Daniel, I also think building a curve is underrated. A lot of PT players make decks with unbalanced curves, and I had to tell teammates to just prioritize having a well-balanced curve. Yeah, so one of Sirkovic's best slides was the win rate difference in playing a 2-drop or not was like 10%. So, you know, play your things on time is still better than most things. Like, it's better to have a bad 2-drop played on turn 2 than not having something at all. Depends on the set on how true that is, but yeah. Paraco, just remember seeing the slide where the top recommended counters and Thunder Gunner and Broadcast Rambler were the top recommended cards for Boros. Yeah. So like the 5-drops are still fine. It's just like you don't want many of them, right? That's the important part. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Oh, ads. Oh, okay. If you missed something on ads, sorry. Let me know if you did. I'll get you back. Have I used limited grades before? They make this. Yeah, so there's a few. You can use grades that makes this more user friendly. So if I go to black, white, red, white red is a terrible example, but let's say blue, red, right? This is a lot more user friendly. I think I'm too used to like the matrix view, so to speak. I'll remove some filters, by the way. I don't need to like. I don't need this. I often don't need the opening hand or drawn in game, and I probably don't need scene. And like this will be fine for me. But yeah, grades makes this more user friendly. Archetype, grades, and filter date, and you're good. This is much more user friendly, of course. The only issue with this, no, this is actually pretty good. Honestly, this is just an easier way to read it. The only problem with this is it only gives you the win rate in hate. The win rate in hand, like not knowing like other aspects of the card, like opening hand. Sometimes I want to check, etc. So you're losing some equity, but for the vast majority of people, this will just be easier. The green mythic vehicle has worse data because people had too many vehicles in their deck. Possible. Velociraptor, right? Not yeah, it is Velocipede, right? Yeah, so I mean it's one of the top performers, sorted by what? Like picks, sorry. Yeah, so here. Yeah, so if they're playing it, if your theory is people are playing this incorrectly, what I would do is look into the win rate when main decked. But it's at the same rank as its win rate, right? 40 and 40 out of 273 and 52. So I don't think that holds water. It's probably a little weaker, and you're probably a little right. There is that bias, but probably not. If you're like not sure, you can sort by top on deck construction. There are issues with filtering by top players, by the way. So because it's not top players versus top players, it's top players versus random people. So like tricks like from top players. Like when you're looking at top player data, stuff that's self-serving, so like cards that perform better if I do the right choice, like stock up, will, like if the win rate's higher with the top player, that makes sense. But be careful about stuff like bounce off, etc. Because if you're playing against a good player, bounce off is worse because they know it's up. So this is interesting, by the way. So in top players, Velocipede is at very low range compared to what it should be. So it might be a deck construction issue because a top player that has too many vehicles is probably not going to win the game regardless. So that's why it's low. It's because like there are more non-games that are going to be a function of having too many of that card. So if you want to test your theory, you can also go to the bike, which is a vehicle people would be most likely. But the bike has a really high rank. So either that means like the multicolored green decks are like how to win. And like top players know how to build them better or not. What's another good vehicle? Earth Rumbler works on itself, but I could check it. See, so Earth Rumbler has a lowish rank in deck. So I think your Vehicle Fury does hold water. Because Earth Rumbler is a little overrated and it adds a vehicle. Whereas the bike is more in the multicolor deck. So, like, check cards that are similar to check your Fury. Yeah. Limitedgrades.com. I could check that 1 second. You also have Untapped that has stuff, but that's paid, so I don't want to recommend it. Yeah, this. So, I mean, it's the same as... it's just better filtering, but it's the same view as this grade thing, right? Just a little... Like, if I go into Selesnya, it's the same view. But, like, you could filter it more. Like, right, like, oh, I don't know which 4-drop to play, etc. So, different filters, different view, but yeah, same principles. Yeah, so vehicles that can crew themselves are important, or vehicles that do something. All right. Cool, we're on 2 hours. I don't mind, like, a little bit more time. But if you have questions, this is last call. On the process, on anything. Yeah. So if you pay 17 lands for Patreon, I might as well promote them a bit. You can get this view, which is what I do for card evaluation. Like, you have every card in the set. So I can go on Lagora and, for example, go like, okay, well, it's just a... This is what I mean, by the way, with +2. Is like this rank here. So, like, if I go into Streaking Oil Gorger, and I'll filter the dates now that we can... you know, white black is +2, but the card is -1. So I know that a bunch of people are gonna underrate this card because they're gonna look at the win rate, they're gonna see it's bad, but in white black it works well. So like if I'm in white black, this is exactly what I want. So like it's a +2 card in white black, but it's a negative card in other archetypes. You can also see visually this. This is also something you can measure yourself, and then you get access to this graph. So like all the cards went down a little bit, by the way. So like this isn't unique. But like you can see if the card is performing better or worse over time. So like if I take Stampeding Scurryfoot, you'll notice the win rate doesn't really change meaningfully. But if I take, say, Hazard of the Dunes, which is a much more mediocre card, but like it's still static. What's the last one? The Mole? Pothole Mole. That one's also static. Okay. Green seems to have dialed down a little bit, so it's fine. Cool. Do you have any opinion on Scooter? What's Scooter? The sky thing here? This one? 1 second. Scooter. Spot Cycle Scouter. Yeah, so it's bad, right? But like it's clearly terrible. The problem with this card, right, is it's clearly terrible if you're playing in a 17-line deck. Because you need material for this. It's bad. But like look at it's increasing. So people are building the Boros decks better, right? So that's one thing. And then like, and you're getting it for free, and like if you have more material it becomes good. So like Preordain has always been historically better in low land count decks than in high land count decks. Yeah, Esper archetype slide, you mentioned personal bias preference guiding you on your early picks. Do you personally still have some biases in this set? I like black. That's my bias. I like that. So the reason I like black, let's remove these filters. Let's go by color. I don't like thinking in terms of color, but if I did have a bias, it would be this. If I go into rarity, common. So what I like about black is Engine Rat. So like look at these average takens at like 6.7, 5.5. The Bobble, the Terror, and the Spin Out are kind of whatever, but you have Overdrive at 8. So like all these black cards here, so you have 6 commons. I'm pretty happy to take in most spots, and they're like a really solid foundation. So like if I was to have like commons, I know that these Rat, the Wickerfold, the Bobble, some of them are better in archetypes, but they're semi-flexible. So like that would be my bias. Is like all the black archetypes kind of are okay with these cards. If I was to have a bias in this set, that would be it. It's not that I hate green, is I think blacks are more universal. Because I don't want to be green-blue without a reason to be in green-blue, for example. Like, green-blue random cards is terrible. Like, I'll show you, right? So if I take UG, and we look at R and M, Like, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cards. And District Mascot and Web Striker League, there's like 14 rares and mythics that are quite powerful, right? That's a lot. But if I don't have these cards, why am I in this color, right? Whereas if I start looking at uncommons, yes, there's the blue ones like Refueler, High Rare, Stock Up. But you know, the commons are then propped up because they have high win rates, but only Scurryfoot is good. Like, you have Ride's End. Like, you have Scurryfoot and then a card you can splash. And it's not even that good. The improvement when drawn is like 1.2. So, you know, Gunner might be better because it... So, like, this is what I'm trying to get at. Is like, blue-green is so much on its rares and mythics that, like, I'm going to be in the collar for those reasons. But I don't want to be in the collar for those commons. There's only one common I like, which is the Scurryfoot. Everything else is just whatever. Yeah, 16 lives with Scooter decks. Yeah, so by the way, it's also why the dual land's so important in Boros. It's, I think, it was at the time. It might not be anymore. But at the time, the dual land was the highest opening hand win rates common. Let me add... Where are we? The land... Look, like, if you look at opening hand, you have Glider, and you have the Wings card, Crag. So just being able to, like, curve out reliably is what matters the most, right? Like, these have the 2 very high opening hand win rates. Along, well, the Gunner, I guess, too. So that's why, like, for white-red, like, the dual land's so important. It's just, like, stability, reliability. All right. Take care, Paraco. Yeah, UG random cards is not great. Yeah. We had many, like, blue-green drafts that just didn't do well. There was one with the God that did well, and then some of without it that did just poorly. Because there's not... Basically, it's you're in blue-green because you have one of these great cards. Not, I want to be in blue-green because it's a great archetype. Sure, yeah. I mean, so that's the important part about, like, the approach, by the way, is it... This approach prevents, like, allows you, if people underrate any part of the... Like, there's a huge pie, right, when you're drafting. And it's a question of which piece am I getting. And if people underrate a specific part of the pie, you can jump into that part of the pie. But if they're not, you can stay away, right? So that's the important fight. Yep. All right. I think that's it. I don't really have... Let's see who's... I don't have really... anything else. I'm just gonna... If you have questions, obviously some people may be watching the VOD, just message me. I'm always up for high-level limited discussion. I think with our approach for this Pro Tour, we were ahead of the curve because I was surprised that we were ahead of the curve still a week ahead now, because people are so focused on... At best, they're focused on archetypes, but they're so focused on how do I draft this? I want to force this, blah, 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 and not on, like, no, there's a holistic argument on how this format works, and you need to understand essentially how, like, every draft you're doing in Aetherdrift is about figuring out what you're supposed to do. And once you understand that, things go well. So, like, if you're looking for this stuff for, like, future high-level limited events, Pro Tours, etc., like, it's about why. Like, always that approach of, like, why this? What is this saying? Is the house draft matching the data or not, right? Like, so, for example, when we tested Eldrazi and MH3, I did tell them green-red was the best. It was matching still, because Chrysalis is a dumb card. So, like, we were seeing that it was matching, but we were building our green decks, red decks better, right? So it was like, yeah, okay, so green-red is going to probably be drafted a lot because of Chrysalis. But then, like, we have more people are fighting over it, which means, like, okay, what are the late picks we want? So, like, every time you're testing for high level limited like this, your goal is to figure something out. Sometimes this is the best deck, but a lot of people know that. So, like, what does the best deck look stripped of, like, all the, like, 5 copies of all the goodies, right? What's the, like, how can we leverage, like, the bottom picks? What are we looking for? So every draft format is different. Every approach is different. So it's about a holistic understanding of the limited format. And, like, you have to... The trickiest part is how do you communicate really complicated limited concepts and dial it down so that, like, anyone regardless of their limited level, presuming some competency, gets the message. That's the kind of balance and trick. It's why I keep helping the team as well, is that expertise grows over time because I'm working with them, I'm preparing with them, so they listen, they trust. There's a high trust bond, and as a result, I also have to match that trust right. I could steer them wrong, but like I try not to. I try to check for biases. I try to make sure that like the strategy works. And what's important for me is I know that my teammates can be good Magic players, but I know they're not going to be the best people at the Pro Tour because there's Javier, there's Jean-Manuel Duprat, there are players of a caliber that if you haven't had the experience to face high level limited, are just so far and above your skill set in technical play. So, but the one thing I have absolute control over is I can teach you how to sit down every one of your draft rounds with the best deck you could possibly have had at the table, so that your 6 rounds you have the best deck. That's my approach, and it's why we've done well, is they always have this deck advantage no matter what the hell is going on. Anyways, that's it. Again, thank you so much everybody for watching. Always ask questions, always a pleasure. Yeah, let's see, let's ship you to somebody who's preparing for the Open. So let's see, if anybody has any recommendations, more than happy. Darkest Mage would probably be my default. Yeah. And he always drafts like data agnostic, but he does actually look at data, which is like an approach I do like, is like he's not alien to that stuff. So let's raid him. Yeah, and the gameplay in this format's really tough, but like that's part of the fun too. Right, you're also playing you're also like learning limited while playing against top players, so like you are improving your technical set, of course. Yeah, let's go backseat. Sure, yeah. Try the backseat Darkest Mage. Should go well for you. All right, let me read him. They're proposing different people, which is cool, but you know, it's sorted for me. I don't know GMTG. One viewer, that'd be cool too. Okay, well, let's just because like for the Bloomberg Arena Open, Darkest Mage was talking about cards that people were ignoring, like Portent of Calamity and Wishing Well, and like they meant that I looked into the information about those cards, and I realized that they were massively undervalued. So that was like part of how I got $2,000 actually. So it's really important to watch people who challenge what your lines of thought are. So like if you draft a lot of multicolored decks, I wouldn't watch Sam. I'd like watch people who are more consistent standard style stuff. If you're like not data based, watch somebody who's data based. If you're like, oh, I'm like old school drafter, then I wouldn't watch Ham TV. I would watch like somebody on the like Alex Nikolic, who's like always gonna like look at information and stuff. Like just watch somebody who challenges the way you think. Very important. Anyways, I'll read Darkest Mage. Have fun. If you're watching on VOD, you are more than welcome to message me about any questions. Have a great time. I'm going to put my headphones on for this as well. And that's it for this recording.